Okay, we really need to talk about something, a kind of virus that has infected pretty much everyone's workday. It's this deep-seated but totally flawed idea that being busy automatically means you're being productive. It's a lie we've all been told, and honestly, we've kind of stopped questioning it.
So, I've got to ask you straight up. Just think about your day so far. Were you just busy or were you actually productive? Because let me tell you, the difference between those two words is absolutely everything. This quote just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? It perfectly captures that feeling we've all had. Your calendar is jammed, your to-do list is a mile long, but at the end of the week, you look back and think, wait, what did I really get done? You're just spinning your wheels. And that brings us to the first major symptom of this whole problem, the badge of busyness. It's like our society has taught us to wear our exhaustion like some kind of medal of honor. We've learned to mistake all that frantic motion for actual, genuine progress. So what does this busyness really look like day to day? Well, it's basically drowning in a sea of low-value tasks. It's that constant obsessive email checking, it's sitting through meetings that 100% should have just been an email, and it's spending hours polishing tiny details on things that, in the grand scheme of things, just don't matter. And the result of all this, you feel like you're stuck running on a hamster wheel. You're pouring in all this energy. I mean, your input is through the roof, but your output, the actual progress you're making, it just doesn't add up. And that is a surefire recipe for burnout and frustration. Okay, so if we're going to solve this thing, we need a proper diagnosis first. We have to be able to name the enemy. And what we're really up against is something we can call the busyness virus. So what is it really? At its core, the busyness virus is this super contagious belief system. It's the lie that says if you just throw enough hard work at anything, you're going to be successful. But what that lie does is it masks the real problem, the systemic failure, that most of our energy is being completely wasted on stuff with almost zero impact. And this gets us right to the engine behind the virus itself, what we call the lie of linear productivity. This is all about the massive and usually hidden imbalance between the effort we're putting in and the results we're getting out. This is the fundamental truth you have to accept. You just have to. In any complex system, like your career or your business or even your life, effort and result are never equal. That idea that 1 hour of work gets you 1 unit of progress, it's a complete myth. And this chart, well, it visualizes the brutal reality of the 80-20 principle. It's very likely that you're spending 80% of your precious energy on tasks that are only generating about 20% of your actual results. You see that huge gap between the bars? That is literally where our potential goes to die. So this all leads to this central conflict, this societal deception, really, that pits two completely different ways of working against each other. It's the way of the grind versus the way of geometry. Let's break this down. The grind. That's what society is always screaming at us to do. It values motion over everything else. It's just brute force, linear effort. High energy, but really low results, low leverage. It's about fighting the friction in a poorly designed system. But geometry, that's the total opposite. It's about direction. It's strategic. It's about finding those low energy moves that get you huge results. It's not about fighting the system. It's about designing a better one. So we've diagnosed the virus. We see the problem. Now, what about the antidote? Well, the antidote is all about finding what's called your systemic advantage. Your systemic advantage is the cure. It's about developing the skill to spot those few high-leverage activities where a tiny bit of focused effort creates massive, outsized results. This is how you take that 80-20 rule and you flip it completely in your favor. So how do you even start? It begins with a really critical shift in your mindset. You have to stop, look at your to-do list, and just completely destroy the idea that all those tasks are created equal. Because they're not. Some of them are worth 100 times more than others. And this brings us right to the end here, to the big takeaway, escaping the illusion. Because now that you can see the matrix, so to speak, you're faced with a very, very clear choice. You've basically got two paths. On one path, you can remain a slave to the system. You stay trapped by that 80% of noise, always feeling busy, but never actually getting ahead. Or you can take the other path. You can become the strategist, the person who learns to ignore all that noise and capitalizes on the very few opportunities that will actually change the game. Staying stuck in this cycle
Really believing that all your motion is progress, that is the ultimate systemic failure. It leaves you so drained from fighting all the unimportant battles that you have no energy left to seize the opportunities that could truly change your life.
So, I'm going to leave you with this one last thought. Now that you know about the busyness virus, about the 80-20 imbalance, and about the choice between grind and geometry, the only real question left is a personal one. What 80% of noise in your life are you ready to start ignoring starting today?
You ever have one of those days, a 12-hour marathon of work? You're totally wiped out, but when you look back, you can't really name one single thing that actually moved the needle? You were busy for sure, but were you effective? Let's get into it, because we are about to pull back the curtain on this idea that all hard work is created equal. And I want you to really sit with this question for a second. It's the key to everything we're about to unpack. Is your day just a flurry of motion, or is it filled with genuine progress? Because they are absolutely not the same thing. And mixing them up, that's probably the biggest mistake most of us make. And this, right here, this is the villain of our story. We're going to call it the equality fallacy. Is this deep-seated, almost invisible belief that every task on your list has the same value, that if you just work more, you'll get more. It is a lie, a really convincing one that keeps so many smart people stuck. Now, look, it's really easy to beat yourself up over this, to think it's just you, a lack of focus, but it's not. This is bigger than that. It's like a cultural virus. We're dealing with a total systemic failure in how we even think about work. You've seen this a million times, right? Someone asks, "Hey, how are you?" And the answer is always, "Oh, just slammed, so busy." And it's said with this weird mix of exhaustion and pride. We've somehow taught ourselves that a calendar packed to the gills means you're important. It's a total illusion. I love this quote. This right here is so important. Grind is just brute force. It's working harder, putting in more hours, just powering through. But geometry, well, that's about strategy. It's about leverage. Society cheers for the grind, but the real wins, the breakthroughs, they happen with geometry. So, what's the real cost of buying into this fallacy? It's not just about wasting a few hours. No, it's way worse. It's about creating a state of mental chaos, where your absolute best ideas get totally drowned out by constant, unimportant noise. And that leads us to this concept, cognitive congestion. It's that brain fog you feel when your mind is just jammed with little things, emails, notifications, tiny to-dos. You end up trying to optimize everything at once, and there's just no mental horsepower left for the big stuff, the creative, strategic thinking that actually matters. This chart just nails the problem perfectly. We look at our to-do list, and it seems like a flat, democratic list of equals. That's a huge category error. You're literally giving the same amount of your precious brain power to a $10 task as you are to a $10,000 decision. The reality is that your tasks live in a strict hierarchy, and only a tiny few at the top really count. And here's what that looks like in the real world. For most of us, a shocking 80% of our energy goes into things that produce maybe 20% of our results. That's what you call a dilution of impact. Your most powerful skills are being spread so thin that they have no real punch. And the long-term cost of all this? It's systemic stagnation. That feeling of being totally stuck, running on a hamster wheel. You're doing what's called linear grinding, just trying to do the same things but faster. In engineering, making a useless process more efficient is just a colossal waste of time. You're not getting closer to a breakthrough, you're just getting more exhausted. I want you to think about it like this. You've got this incredible, high-performance engine inside you, but by burying it under a mountain of tiny, trivial tasks, you're forcing it to crawl along in first gear. You've spread your best-in-class bandwidth so thin that there's no punch left for the things that could change everything. Okay, so that all sounds pretty bad, right? But what if I told you there's a fundamental law of how the universe works that explains all of this, and, more importantly, gives us the key to fix it? Welcome to the Pareto principle. You've probably heard of it as the 80-20 rule. Now, the key thing to get here is that this is not some trendy productivity hack. This is a law of nature. You can see it everywhere, from the wealth in an economy to the peas in a pod. A tiny number of causes are responsible for the vast majority of effects. And this chart just lays it out so clearly. The relationship between what you put in and what you get out is not one-to-one.
It is wildly, beautifully, and sometimes brutally lopsided. That critical 20% of your work is creating 80% of your results, and the other 80% of your effort, well, it's mostly just static.
This is the one truth you need to internalize to escape the work harder trap. The universe doesn't reward activity, it rewards leverage. It doesn't care about the hours you log, it cares about where you aim those hours. Once you truly accept this non-linear reality, you can start to play a whole different game.
So how do we actually use this? Well, the solution isn't some new to-do list app, it's a mindset shift. A pretty radical one, actually. It's not about adding more to your plate, it's about subtraction. It's about having the guts to just ignore things.
So let's ask the final question here. If this 80-20 principle is so powerful, so universal, what is really stopping us from using it? Is it time? Is it skill? No. The real barrier is something else entirely. Here's your new operating system. It's simple to understand, but not so easy to do. First, you have to identify that vital 20%, the stuff that actually produces results. Second, you have to isolate it. Build a fortress around it to protect it from the noisy, trivial 80%. And third, you execute on that 20% with everything you've got. Total, focused intensity. And that, right there, is the heart of it all. The obstacle isn't your schedule, it's your courage. The courage to say no. The courage to let small things fail so that the big things can fly. So the question isn't, are you busy anymore? The real question is, what do you have the courage to ignore?
Let's talk about something we've all been told our whole lives, that the key to success is just working hard. Well, what if that's not the whole story? Today, we're diving into something called the geometry of leverage. It's a completely different way of thinking that's all about strategy over brute force, so you can finally work smarter, not just harder.
So let's just start with a really important question, and I want you to be honest with yourself here. Are you actually productive, or are you just busy? Seriously, the difference between those two things is everything, and figuring that out is the first real step to getting your time back and making a much bigger impact than you ever thought possible.
You know, it feels like a lot of us have caught what you could call the busyness virus. It's this weird cultural obsession with just being active all the time. It gives you the feeling of progress, right? But really, it's just constant motion that, more often than not, leads you absolutely nowhere.
And it's so true, isn't it? Busyness has somehow become this strange badge of honor in our society. We've been taught that a packed calendar and a frantic pace mean you're important, you're dedicated, so we fill our days with stuff that doesn't really matter. You know, endless emails, meetings that could have been an email, and we mistake all that running around for real, actual momentum.
What this really is a hamster wheel of linear productivity. You put in a ton of effort, you're exhausted by the end of the day, but your view never really changes. And why is that? Because for every hour of work you put in, you get 1 unit of result back. It's a total trap, and it's what happens when the system you're working in is just poorly designed. And that hamster wheel, it leads us right into what's known as the 80-20 productivity trap. This isn't just a feeling, by the way. It's a mathematical reality that pretty much governs how effort and results get spread out in almost any system you can imagine. Okay, so just look at this chart. It shows this crazy imbalance we're all dealing with. You are probably spending 80% of your energy, that giant slice of the pie, on tasks that are only giving you 20% of your results. The solution isn't to work harder on that 80%. No way. It's to find that vital 20% that actually creates real impact and then just obsess over it. So this really lays out the two paths, two totally different ways of thinking about work. On the left, you've got the grind. That's the old myth that more hours equals more success. It's all about volume. But on the right, you have the geometry, a much smarter system where strategy creates exponential impact. This one's about velocity. So the choice is yours, right? Do you want to keep pushing harder, or do you want to find a better angle? So how do we make that jump from the grind to geometry? Well, the answer is all about mastering the power of leverage. This is the moment where we stop looking for more work to do and we start searching for the fulcrum, that one single pivot point in your system where the tiniest, most focused effort can literally move mountains. So a leverage point is just a place in a system where a small, strategic push creates this huge, outsized result. This is the whole secret. The goal isn't just to be productive anymore, it's to be high leverage, to focus your limited energy only on the things that matter most.
And here's where it gets really revolutionary. The ultimate goal here is to completely decouple your results from your time. That's right, you can actually break that link. Just imagine your impact growing exponentially while the hours you work stay the same, or maybe even go down. That is the incredible promise of leverage.
Now, to pull this off, you've got to make a pretty fundamental shift in your identity. It's time to understand the architecture of leverage. You have to stop thinking like a worker inside the system and start becoming the architect of the system. So how does an architect think? Well, they use something called the Pattern Weaver's Primary Protocol. It's a super simple but incredibly powerful three-step method. First, you identify the one skill, the one relationship, or the one project that matters more than anything else. Second, you go all in on mastering it completely. And then, step 3 is you watch as everything else on your to-do list becomes way easier or just totally unnecessary.
See, the art of leverage is all about using what we call force multipliers. These are tools that just amplify your effort way beyond your own personal capacity. And as you can see here, they can be concrete things like software that automates tasks, capital that you can invest, or delegation to free up your time. But honestly, the most powerful ones are often the things you can't touch, that one mastered skill or that one key relationship we just talked about.
So, when you really boil it all down, the message is simple, but it is transformative. It's an invitation to stop being the worker, the one who's just endlessly toiling away inside a system that somebody else created. And instead, start being the architect of the lever. Be the one who designs the system, who finds that perfect pivot point, and who strategically applies force to create these incredible, almost unbelievable outcomes. When you finally make this shift, what you're really doing is mastering your own personal geometry. You're stepping off that flat, exhausting one-to-one path of effort for reward, and you're hopping onto a soaring, exponential growth curve.
This quote just nails the whole idea, doesn't it? Real, lasting wealth and impact aren't earned through sweat and burnout. They're earned through wisdom, through strategically placing your energy on the system's most critical points of leverage.
When you master the geometry of leverage, the weight of the world really does become lighter, and the results, they can be absolutely staggering. It's a bold statement, I know, but you really can build a system that lets you achieve in a single month what other people who are stuck forever on that hamster wheel struggle to achieve in an entire decade.
So I'm going to leave you with this question to think about. I want you to take a really hard look at the geometry of your own life, your career, your personal goals, and just ask yourself, what is the one skill, the one relationship, the one project, what is your single most powerful lever that if you pulled it would change absolutely everything?
Okay, let me ask you something. Are you busy? I mean, of course you are, right? We all are. But what if I told you that most of that busyness, it's a trap? It's a straight line that leads to burnout, not a breakthrough. Today, we're going to tear that trap apart. We're going to find a systemic advantage that changes, well, everything. Let's get into it. You know exactly what this means. We've all seen it. And hey, let's be honest, we've probably all done it. This idea that if your calendar is packed and you're always in motion, that's a sign of success. But what if that badge of honor is actually hiding a huge problem? What if it's the very thing holding you back from doing your best work? So we're giving this a name, the busyness virus. And it's a perfect name because it's this belief that has infected our entire work culture. The idea that just being active is the same as making progress. It's this assumption that to get more, you just have to do more. But if you're here, you probably have a feeling that that just isn't true. Does this look familiar? I bet it does. For so many people, this is the daily reality. You wake up, you dive into this sea of low-value stuff, and at the end of the day, you feel productive just because you were moving. But you're not actually making progress. You're just fighting friction. You're stuck in the grind. And this gets us to the core issue, the lie that feeds this whole business virus. We've been told our whole lives that input equals output. You know, work for 10 hours, you get twice as much done as working for 5. But life, your work, it's a complex system. And in any complex system, effort and results are almost never equal. Just look at this. This chart says it all, really. It's very likely that you're spending a staggering 80% of your precious energy on what we're going to call noise. These are all the tasks that produce maybe 20% of your results. The real magic, it's in that other 20% of your effort. That's your leverage. That's what's creating 80% of your success. And this is what it feels like. You're just running faster and faster on this wheel, getting more and more exhausted, more and more frustrated, because the work you're putting in just doesn't seem to match what you're getting out.
You feel like you're moving, sure, but you're not actually going anywhere. So, this is the choice you have to make. On one side, you've got the linear grind. This is society's default setting. It values raw effort and it treats every task like it's equally important. The result? Total burnout. But on the other side, there's systemic geometry. This is about being smart. It's about strategic positioning and finding those few critical leverage points that create not just better results, but exponential results. So, how do we actually make that shift? How do we go from the grind to geometry? Well, it's not about trying harder, it's about having a system. And that system is what we call the leverage protocol. This is your blueprint for getting out of the trap. So what is it? It's simple, really. The leverage protocol is a repeatable 3-step method. Its entire job is to help you find that powerful 20% of what you do, your leverage, and then, this is the key, scale it for maximum impact. It all kicks off with 3 really critical actions: audit, label, and exclude. This is the moment you stop guessing what's important. This is where you start using actual data to figure it out for sure. This is how you take back your focus from all that noise. All right, here's the plan. Step 1 is the time value audit. For the next 48 hours, you're a scientist and your life is the experiment. Track every single thing you do. Then step 2. This is where you have to be ruthless. You label everything as either noise or leverage. If it doesn't directly help you reach your most important goal, guess what? It's noise. And finally, you apply the rule of exclusion. You pick the top 1 or 2 tasks from your leverage list and you ignore everything else until they are done. Period. This is so important. We think that getting great results means adding more stuff to our to-do list. It's the opposite. It's about having the discipline to subtract what doesn't matter. True mastery, in anything, comes from strategically eliminating the trivial stuff. Okay, so once you've found your high-leverage tasks and you're focused on them, the final step is to amplify them. You don't just want to do the right things, you want to make them bigger, better, and more impactful. This is where you find your force multiplier. And this is the question I want you to really ask yourself. Right now, are you acting like the engine in your own life? Are you the one providing all the energy, doing all the pushing and pulling yourself? Or are you the designer? Are you the one building a machine that runs efficiently, whether you're constantly pushing it or not? So what does a force multiplier even look like? Well, it can be almost anything that scales your 20%. It might be a piece of software that automates a really repetitive task. It could be a simple checklist or a system that makes your workflow totally seamless. Or it could be delegating a task to someone who can just do it better or faster than you can. This right here is the core idea. If you take away only one thing from this whole explainer, let it be this. This is the mindset shift that separates the person on the hamster wheel from the person achieving exponential results. Stop trying to be the engine. Step back and start being the designer of the machine. Let this one really sink in for a second. Your mind, your focus, your creativity, these are your most valuable high-bandwidth assets. The single biggest mistake you can make is wasting them on low-leverage noise like answering unimportant emails or perfecting minor details. It's time to point all that power where it actually counts. So if you're ready to stop working for the system and you want to start making the system work for you, here is your first actionable step. Subscribe to Unordinary Mind and just comment the word leverage below. We'll send you our 80/20 systemic audit template so you can get started right away. Let's make this shift together.